Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, sir.
Come back in. The 2018-19 Board of Education budget correction, we had just a clerical error in that we knew that the Board of Ed's budget was going, was proposed at 2.59%, but actually it was 2.59 something. It went 4.7. It was going to say 4.7, so it actually went out to the 100th and the 1,000th position, and so we miscalculated when we moved the budget. We've consulted with town attorney. We're very early in our budget process. We haven't finished up at Board of Finance, of course, and we haven't gone to town meeting yet. So he feels very comfortable that we can put in a motion to clarify the clerical error.
Okay, I'll move to approve a correction to the previous motion of March 7th, 2018, due to a clerical error to approve the proposed 2018-2019 town budget in the amount of $72,036,140, consisting of the following, and to forward to the Board of Finance for approval. General Government, $18,094,025. Debt Service, $5,369,986. Capital, $795,186. Board of Education, $47,776,943.
Second.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? I'll just say one thing, that I know Mrs. Johnson was sicking over this. I know you lost sleep over this. I know this is very rare to even have this happen, but with all the production that comes out of your office and off your desk, and a $70 million budget in the course of a year, this town is grateful to have you. And this little clerical error, although a mark in your permanent file, it will be forgotten very quickly. So thank you for all the work on this, Mrs. Johnson. I didn't publicly thank you when we were doing the budget, so you did an amazing job as always. It's good to have you there. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Terrific. We have appointments and to boards and commissions, and I think there's a couple tonight. Or?
Right. The first one, Julie Horner, I don't have a bio on her. She sent it to me. My printer would not print. It said, replace ink. I didn't have any.
I know Julie, but
Yeah.
maybe some others don't.
Yeah, Julie has been a town resident for a number of years. She's raised her family here. She's had a couple that have gone through the school system. One is currently there. Her husband is a lifelong town resident, I believe. And she's been a teacher at Niantic Center School for as long as I can possibly remember. She's very committed to the youth of our community, and she expressed an interest, and I think she'd be a wonderful member to the Youth Services Commission. So I'll move to appoint Julie Horner, 42 Manwaring Road, Niantic, as a member of the Youth Services Commission with a term to expire January 3rd of 2022.
Second.
Any other comments? It's great to have people step up and volunteer on any organization. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Terrific. Mrs. Hardy, I think you're bringing one to the table, too?
Yes, Mr. Harvey Beeman as an alternate to the Commission of Natural Resources. He's a relative newcomer to town, 2015. Would like to get involved. He's attended several meetings of the commission and thinks that he can offer some assistance. He has a very varied background, and so it's nice that we can start to bring in some of the newer residents in town to be involved. So I move to appoint Harvey Beeman of 11 Green Valley Lakes Road, East Lyme, as an alternate member of the Commission of Natural Resources with a term to expire on January 6th, 2020.
Second.
Wonderful. Again, very thankful for people stepping up. All in favor for Mr. Beeman, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Terrific. A unanimous vote. Terrific. We have the next on our agenda is the discussion of the Smith Harris House and having functions, full-on adult functions. We've had this discussion at this level in the past, and well, times are tough and economic times, and there is some opportunity um, that exists out there for us to better utilize or fully utilize some of our space. And the one thing I'd like to bring in front of you tonight is a discussion about, as we know, we can't have alcohol served on town property without the exception of the Board of Selectmen, specific exceptions. And I'd like to give that, that exception to the Smith Harris House. As we know, they have a barn and a facility that is it's away from neighborhoods. It's in its own little place. And they have a barn that gets requested many times for weddings and functions, maybe even a beer tasting for for the holidays or whatever. But it's a place that we could create a income back, where times are tough, and I know the Friends of the Smith Harris group have kind of thinned out, where they used to bring in a whole lot of money. It's been very difficult over the last couple of years to match what they used to bring in. And I think there's an opportunity for us to subsidize some of the money we give to Smith Harris House if it's done correctly. Simply putting out a table or tapping a keg is not what I have in mind. But if someone's going to have a function and they bring in a tip certified bartender with the liability, and we'd see that all over town when the Children's Museum popped a tent behind St. John's, and they brought in a caterer with bartenders with the liability that removed the liability from St. John's, and fully placed it on the shoulders of the caterer. These things can happen. And these things happen all the time in other towns. So I'd like to have that discussion. I know it's been a lively discussion in the past. I'd like to put that out there, and I'd like some feedback on that.
I'll start off.
Sure.
I'd say that this is probably the fourth time
Yes.
over the years that this has been brought to the commission. I am vehemently opposed to the serving of liquor on town property. I think it starts a very bad precedent. I think we have businesses in town that pay very heavily for a liquor license. They have the means for security. They are licensed. They pay a considerable amount of money for that license. And I don't think that this is appropriate use of town property. I don't think that town residents should be put in any kind of jeopardy, which can happen even with an outside organization offering liability. And so I'm very supportive of the Smith Harris House, but I'm not going to vote for this. I'm on record as being opposed to it, and I will continue to be opposed.
I failed to invite, and so noted, Mrs. Hardy. I failed to invite Maggie Prokop and Bob Seidfeld. Got it. If you have any comments, you're from the commission, you'd have to come up to the podium. Maybe you could fill in what I may have left out, if there's anything.
Okay, Maggie Prokop, 52 Lovers Lane, East Lyme. I am a commission member of the Smith Harris House. We have plenty of times where I could have rented that barn, but because of no alcohol, they backed out. That would bring in a lot of money.
Right. Are there any questions for Maggie?
No, I was just gonna ask some questions. Like,
It just sits there.
if this was approved, how would you go about this? You mentioned we required insurance.
Oh, yeah, we
what could
require
we-
insurance now, but we would require, pardon me, more insurance for liquor. I mean, I'm just not gonna say, oh yeah, well, you can have liquor, no problem. That's not the way it works.
Now, it would be a caterer who has the liquor liability insurance with the full dram amendment to their policy, where they would cover, like a restaurant, like a liquor store has to protect themselves. But it would be on the shoulders of the caterer.
So this isn't someone's uncle that's going to be
No.
running this.
No,
You
no,
have
no.
to have a fully
Right.
licensed and not someone just running out to get a policy for the day. There are
policies you can get.
there are
that's
caterers
not what-
that do this.
Yeah, that's not what it would be.
Would you, if we were to approve a blanket on this property, could we get like a limit on how many times this could happen at the property?
We could do anything we want. It's open
could
for
we-
discussion. I wouldn't do it during school year. I would say we should start off with definitely the summer months.
Well, we don't. I only rent the barn from April to November
Okay.
because there's no heat in the barn in the winter.
Oh, right.
So it wouldn't happen mainly during the school year.
I know that you do rent out the main house. Do you anticipate that?
No, we don't rent out the main house.
You don't anymore? Okay.
No.
Okay.
As of now, we don't.
Okay.
It's a small space.
So just a barn during summer months is what we're being asked for,
Yes.
with insurance required, with a professional. We have to figure out what that really means. Right.
Yeah,
And we could limit the number of events. Okay, I guess those.
Limiting the number of events would.
Well, that may come natural with just summer, but we don't necessarily throwing it out there. We may not want it every night, right?
Oh no,
In the
I'm
summer,
not-
right? Yeah,
it's not going to be every night.
right.
Mainly, the barn is rented on weekends, for weddings, birthday parties. Like people want a 50th or 60th birthday party for a person, and they want liquor there. I've had a wedding. This is just one case where I was denied liquor. What they wanted was a beer party. I didn't know that. They said, you promised we could have liquor. I said, I did not promise. I said I would go before the Board of Selectmen. My husband was sworn at over the telephone by the parents and the grandparents. I was sworn at. It wasn't the Board of Selectmen's fault. It was the
you were put in a
people.
very uncomfortable position. And you and your
Yeah.
husband. I understand that. No, I think we could limit day hours. We could limit the number, the hours. We could limit the time of the year. We could do anything we want. I think we should certainly do all that. And maybe we start off slow with just allowing a couple. If I was wanting to have a wedding, what would the number be that you would limit me to for guests? If I was to
Probably 144, because that's the number of chairs we have.
144.
Yeah.
That's inside outside.
It's
kind
a
of
small.
Yeah.
It's a small wedding. I've had weddings there where they put tents up and.
Yeah. It's a big number, actually. Right.
I will say, this has come up before in zoning for farms and stuff like that. And the main concern there, and why I think it was mostly denied, was because most of those farms are deep in residential areas.
As this is.
It is, but it is on the edge of a commercial district in the school, so I wouldn't put this in the same class as where I think some of those farms are located. But I understand your concern. That's my question. I'll pass it on so other people can ask questions. But-
Yeah, zoning generally handles those kinds of details, and there have been several proposals brought before them.
Right.
Well, that's, and I,
Well, tomorrow they could have a wedding there. We're just talking about what they can serve. They can have 144 people tomorrow at an event in their barn, and we've never had a problem with that. Again, it's a town property. It's not in a residential area, and it's fairly isolated. There is Hopkins Drive to the back, to the rear. So we aren't talking about can they have events. They already can. And they already do. I've been to several events at your house.
Well, I'm talking about private events.
Yeah, right.
well, okay. I think Mark brings up a good point. This probably would have to be something that would be reviewed by zoning because of, it needs a lot of, there too. And I understand Roseanne's concerns, but we're getting to a point where we're asking our historic properties, such as the Smith Harris House, to do more with much less. This may help, not only, it's a resource that a lot of people don't even realize exists in town. It might be an idea to look at what do they do at Rocky Neck. Rocky Neck has a pavilion out there where they allow alcohol to be served. We have the same thing. Mr. Morris is in the back. He's a past, he's very affiliated with the yacht club. See what their policies are. We could, I wouldn't mind looking into something like that. And I also have a lot of trust and faith in you'll have somebody there at all these events.
Normally me.
And I trust your commission to make sure if something was looking like it was not going properly, you would intervene. I
Oh,
have
yeah.
very little concern about that. And with the dram thing too, I know if someone's coming in to cater this and provide the bartending services, they have to be very careful because their liability is out there
It's on
too.
them.
It's on them. For the most part, with weddings and that, I'm comfortable. There's, if it was, there are certain events I wouldn't want to see there. Like if it was like sometimes where they have a pub crawl. We don't want something like
No.
nothing like that. But I don't mind exploring it at all because I think if it's done properly and carefully, it's something that might be an opportunity for us. And here again, we could say, okay, over by a certain time, and making sure all these I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And you've come to us to ask for this, so I'm okay with looking a little further into this, very much so.
I think when something benefits a nonprofit in our town and it's for the common good, and if it's done the right way, I think adults can behave like adults, and we have assurances from caterers and people who are certified doing these things that could happen.
Mark, can we, I'm sorry, was Dan about to say something?
Yeah. Well,
Dan, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, no.
I'll wait.
My question was, can we discriminate against wine and beer versus hard alcohol?
Good
Okay.
to start. I mean,
Yeah,
again,
well-
it's not allowed unless by specific exception by the Board of Selectmen, and we can choose any rule we want or say no to the request. So we can come up with rules. Wine and beer might be acceptable, especially to start. I mean, if you want to dip your toe in the water, maybe that's where you start. You could.
Well, would wine and beer, let's say that was the proposal, would that work for what you're trying to do? Would that attract enough people that would want to use the?
Yeah, it would.
If you could do wine, there's a distinction between a full liquor license for
Sure.
a bar or a restaurant and a wine and beer license, and wine and beer is less stringent. I think, from my perspective, I'm not worried that we're going to put a local restaurant out of business because you're serving a few beers up at the barn. But the concern for me is, of course, the liability to the town, and the pass-through liability and the question we need to answer is, does having a qualified licensed bartender, does that put up enough of a firewall between the town? Someone gets rip-roaring drunk and pulls out of there and there's a horrible accident.
I think before someone got rip-roaring drunks, it would be noticed.
But we have to be sure that we have to be sure that the town can't be liable, or we can limit, or at least we can take reasonable steps to limit that liability. It's a point that was made that I think is a valid point is we're asking, Smith Harris House and these other houses that we enjoy for historical value to keep them maintained, and they need a vehicle to be able to continue to do that. And using the barn in that way sounds like a good opportunity to make some money to help preserve that house. The other side of it is we have to make sure we do it in a way that protects the town. And I think both of those ideas can be satisfied. I think if we do it the right way, I think we need to get an opinion from town council before we go too much further to make sure, let's see what other towns do, how they handle it, how they handle the liability piece. Is there a distinction a significant distinction between a full liquor and just wine and beer? Those are, I think, some of the questions we need to answer. If we can get them answered in a way that protects the town, philosophically, I wouldn't be opposed to using the facility in that way, as long as we're protected.
Well, right now, all the money that we earn renting the barn does go to the town. That does not go to the Friends or the house.
I said, well,
Right, so, and I
That's
had that
another-
discussion with you offline, should
Yeah.
it be the Friends doing this, so it goes back into your house that you can apply to, and I have no problem with that. Or if it goes to the general fund, then it would be coming off of, eventually it trickles down to you anyway, since you have a significant budget. So I don't know how that would work, and we could work that out in our future
it's a
discussions.
separate problem to be resolved.
How to resolve that. I know that when you have a certified bartender, and if you're requiring the liability on that, on the people that are serving, that of course that would be the first liability. Could the town's liability be pulled into it? Yes. And that's what we have insurance for. We have a significant insurance policy to cover us on a number of different things. And we'll check with Kerma to make sure, things like this would be covered. Other towns, this happens. I was approached by a restaurant group downtown who wants to close down a street. They wanted to before. Like Westerly does, they close down their whole downtown and give out bracelets and a mug, and you go from place to place. And it's a big fundraiser. They raise $50,000 in an afternoon or an early evening. And they're doing it on their streets. And the town is part of that.
Right.
And there must be a way for towns to make sure they have themselves covered. Because of course we wouldn't have cash for this, and it would have to be covered under our Kerma policy, which is our insurance policy. But the frontline liability would be the caterer's liability. And we'd insist on that and make sure we were crystal clear before we let someone come in.
So I'll just add, could you envision doing fundraisers for the house with like beer tastings and wine tastings? Those seem to be common these days and generate a
We
lot of
had a
interest.
wine tasting last fall, but we had to go off-site to do it.
Right.
And that was for the Friends of Smith Harris to
Okay.
raise money.
Um,
But I mean, if we could have a
But I can
wine
envision you doing it at the house.
in the barn,
to get people to get a different demographic of people to come see the house. There's local people in town that do these wine tastings, business people.
yeah.
And we will have a few breweries in town within the next year. So I guess Mark I understand Roseanne's concern. I think it's legitimate. I could support something if we could, what Dan just said, if we could prove liability, had our town attorney agree, what is required, and we're assured that we're going to be covered. If we had limited hours, I would like to see, if we're going to start something like this, a limited number of events. There are houses and
Sure.
stuff near there.
That's
We
good.
don't want raging parties.
No.
We don't want this to be a
Yeah.
raging party, and
Nor do they.
let's limit it.
Yeah.
And I would say beer and wine only. That's something that if we got all those facts, and I could be comfortable if we could come up with language. to
Let me
protect.
start, let me work with Maggie and Bob and Anna as far as the Kerma piece, and put something together for your review for the next meeting.
Yep. And this is all, if we did decide to go forward with this, we could give it a year trial.
Yeah,
And see
just
how
like
it
we
goes.
do
If
the
it's-
outdoor
if it's an
dining
absolute
downtown.
disaster.
Right. And I'll also speak to zoning, whether this would need to.
Yeah,
pass.
and yes, Roseanne made a good point on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point. Okay.
Great, so I'll put something together, and then, again, we'll have a full discussion, and we'll decide if it's gonna be this ability or not, so. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Maggie, and thank you for your efforts in keeping the house alive.
We
Very much
try.
so.
People with programming and doing everything you do.
We try.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Keep it up. Thank you for the communication. Next on the agenda, 3E is the added, which is the memorandum between the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection and the Town of East Lyme. I forwarded this to you, the contract. This is Mr. Morris, our former Emergency Management Director, now retired, and our current, Chris Taylor. You guys still get along? So, You know, there's a lot of a lot of jargon in here, and a lot of stuff that we might not understand. What is this program, and why would the state want to have a person locally?
Well, I think it's a good opportunity for the town of East Lyme. Chris Taylor, 9 Monticello Drive,
And you're the
Town Fire Marshal.
thank you.
I think it's a good opportunity for our town because we're going to get a person that's going to be forefront in this epidemic that's going on right now. I think with all the news and everything out there with drugs, Mr. Morris can bring all that training back to our town. We're going to be the forefront of training now. And that's a big thing. I know literally today the schools, Mr. Susie sent out a thing about the epidemic and about how all juniors and seniors are going to be going through, it's called Slay the Dragon. It's a brand new program at the high school talking about drugs. So I think with this appointment, it'll allow us, the town, to get better training, to be at the forefront of all of it. For the, so I think it's a good deal. It'll keep Mr. Morris busy about 3 days a week.
Yeah. I thought being
I would think the
grandfather.
grandson would keep them
Yeah.
busy. But so this is a program that's fully supported by the state. So
Yes.
the computer, the car, the allowances of expenses of whatever, that's all state funded.
State funding, correct.
It's a volunteer program, I might add. You don't get a salary for this, and really use no town resources. And we were short of that as well. There's one thing that says the town will be responsible for a per diem if you were to go to a convention, but that's never happened in the history of the program. And you're going to have to just pay your own way for Subway sandwiches if you're at a conference.
Subway.
And we've agreed with a handshake on that. Are there any questions that Chris or Dick could answer for the commission?
If
Go ahead.
could you just give us a 2 or 3 minute? What is this group? What's the purpose of this group? What's the goals? Just
This is
I
the-
read through this, but just
It's the
Big over.
counterterrorist fusion center for the state of Connecticut. All the partners, federal, state, local, are involved in it. I will be the only FRILO, as said, for fire service side for the state of Connecticut. They have the FBI, corrections, judicial, the colleges, local PDs, representatives from each of the regions, the FBI, CIA, people like that are involved with this fusion center that's operated at the state police headquarters. And it can, one of the functions that they would like me to perform is that the opiate crisis, they're coming out with a new app that is anonymous, such as ct.gov, that Connecticut app they have, CT Alert, that you can, if you have an opium issue that you know of, you can give those statistics to this app and it will get dealt with and be acted on. They want to be able to, when we have opium, Narcan issues within the fire service, within the state, they want to start tracking those and see how many times the city of Waterbury has overdoses in a given period of time, whether it's a quarter or 6 month or a monthly type thing, to run those averages throughout the state to see where the biggest population is going on. They also would like me to support and be involved with sharing information with the fire services, such on threat levels and so forth. Currently, they do not have anybody doing that.
okay.
So,
And how often did they meet? And
well, they have weekly meetings that I would have to attend, and I would be involved with them.